nice to be here. And thank you all for coming to this tutorial. Miss, I know it must have been a tough decision given what a great weather we are having outside. Miss, the choice between spending a time in tutorial session and having fun outside must have been a tough one. So when we think about digital footprints, generally the first thing which comes to mind is privacy. That's a privacy issue. And which leads to the question that, okay, privacy is often a personal concern, and we all have different take on privacy. So let everyone decide on their own what they want to do not want to do with the data that they have. But if it was just a personal issue, this might not be as much of a serious topic of debate. The point I'm trying to going to make today is that our digital footprints not only impact our privacy, they also have serious implications for cybersecurity out there. So whether we care about those digital footprints or not, as a cybersecurity researcher and professionals in this area do care about the information about you that is out there. And today we are going to see that linkage between cybersecurity and digital footprints. And later on, I'm going to make some suggestions to you how you can go about managing your digital footprints in a more responsible manner. The objective being, if more and more of us do that, then hopefully the cybersecurity implications won't be as serious as they are today. So let us look at some numbers here. This is the spending on cybersecurity since 2012, and it has been going up every year. At the same time, these are the number of data breach incidents since 2005, and they have also been going up. So it's not like we are not taking cybersecurity seriously. We are, and we are investing a lot of resources into it. But at the same time, we also see that does not seem to have any adverse impact or any mitigating impact on the number of data breach incidents or cybersecurity incidents that have been happening over the years. So who all share the blame? So let us look at various factors that have led to this sad state of cybersecurity and see what our role in all of that is. So system is hacked, and there are various reasons why these systems get breached. You have laws and regulations. So there are a lot of laws on the books, both in US, Canada, Europe, or most of countries in Asia. And these laws target threat agents. So just because the laws are on the books doesn't mean that they are being very effective. Because these are supposed to be deterrent for threat agents not to launch a cyber attack. But that doesn't seem to be working too much. And one of the reasons that have been identified in a bunch of research papers and by practitioners is attributing an attack to a particular threat agent or a group of threat agents. So these laws are not being very effective in limiting the number of cybersecurity incidents that happen every year. Then you have laws which target specific industries and data that they need to be protected. So your medical data is protected by HIPAA in US. Then you have California Consumer Privacy Act, which protects personal data of residents of California. You have EU data, what you call privacy laws, GDPR, which do something similar. So we have these laws, and they have been very good in terms of motivating the industries and data custodians to do a better job of protecting the data that they store on their systems, and to make sure that the data is not breached. So in a sense, this has been one of the good aspects of the legal factors that impact cybersecurity. Then there's your software vendors. How do all the laws and regulations handle mistakes that are made by software vendors? And so far, it's not very clear. Now, just in the US itself, there are people who suggest that product liabilities laws should apply to software vendors also. If they release a bad product which causes harm to the users, they should be tried under liability laws. There are some others who say, well, it's not that easy. I'm not a legal expert. From what I have read, it is not, I go with the second side, that it's really not easy to try software producers and vendors using liability laws. And I haven't seen any major cases where they have been brought to, they have been made to pay for the mistakes that they have made. So there are a lot which needs to be done in this particular area itself. And one of the things which is making this more complex is the fact that some people actually argue, and they have strong reasons for that, that software code itself should be free speech. So that complicates the whole matter of regulating that, because regulating free speech is not that easy, especially in the US, the country where it falls under one of your basic rights. And in one of the cases, I think Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal actually went ahead and accepted that argument that code is actually free speech. So all these things make it very difficult to regulate software vendors so that they are encouraged to produce more secure software. Then we have economic factors, which have an adverse impact on cybersecurity. So there is an asymmetric conflict. There's a very good research paper by Anderson, and he wrote it almost more than 15 years back, but that still applies. Hackers have to find, or threat agents have to find just one gap into our security controls, and they get access to our critical assets. The people responsible for defending these assets have to make sure that all the gaps are plugged, all the missing controls are taken care of, all the patches are applied. So they have to be on top of their job all the time, while hackers or threat agents have to get lucky once and they are into your system. So it's not a symmetric conflict. Then there is this concept of release first and patch later. For a whole bunch of reasons, strategic reasons, first to be wanting to be first to the market and so on. Oftentimes, software vendors would not spend enough resources on testing their software for vulnerabilities. They would rather release the software first and then just hope for the best. As and when vulnerabilities are discovered, they will spend resources on patching it. There is some research from Carnegie by some researchers there like Taylor and all, who have actually found that it is optimal for the software vendors to do that. It makes economic sense for them to do that. So it's not surprising that we often find that buggy software is released into the production and it's patched later on. And then there is this asymmetric information between software users and software producers. And in economics, a lot of research has shown that in cases where the producer has more information on the quality of the product and the users don't have as much information, there is a high likelihood that the equivalent would be that bad products would be released into the market. And that could be working here also, because users don't have as much information on the software product, the code, the testing process, how rigorously it was developed and so on. So they are at a disadvantage, which incentivizes the software producers to release software which is of not that good a quality. So you have bad code, which is installed all over the place. Then you have users themselves to blame for some of the reasons why we have cybersecurity breaches. They don't update their systems. Which I was a couple of years back, I was reading that till 2018, there were some studies which shows that Windows XP was still being used on about 20% of desktops in many places. Windows XP, which was phased out so long back, is still in use, and Microsoft has started supporting it. But there are users who are still using it for whatever reasons they have. Users don't apply patches on time. There's one of the most famous cyber attacks, WannaCry. A patch was available, but users did not patch the systems in time, and thousands of systems were infected by the time everyone figured out what's going on. They use weak credentials, with weak passwords, and share the passwords and so on and so forth. So users also have to take some of the blame. And all these factors have led us to a situation where cybersecurity is really not that good. And we hear about data breach incidents every day. Miss, you can just open any newspaper and just search for cybersecurity breach, and chances are you are going to get a news article. By the way, I don't know if you guys heard about it, but Texas A&M Prairie View was targeted by a cyber attack yesterday, and which actually led to the closing of classes, and that was serious impact. So I checked with some people in our department who are involved with IT help and all, and they still don't know what the reason was, and I haven't been able to find anything else. But it was a very serious cyber attack on that campus, on their network and infrastructure. So we are not going to focus on all the other factors, but we should ask ourselves that what kind of role we are playing in cybersecurity and how important that role is, and do we know its importance. So as I was telling you earlier, this is the latest survey on the most common passwords used out there. So as I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 being used by almost 2.5 million people. Takes less than a second to crack. It has been exposed almost 24 million times. And as you go through the list, you see, and this is our, in most cases, first line of defense. Password is one of the most commonly used cybersecurity controls for access that is used. And this is the current status of that. So it seems that we are not taking our own role in weakening cybersecurity very seriously. You can say, so what? What does it have to do with my digital footprints? Well, let us take a look at one of the most common attacks out there, phishing attacks. In 2020, about 150,000 phishing attacks took place. And as you can see the graph, that number has been only increasing. Interestingly, it has really, the rate of increase has gone up since March 2020 last year. And that is not a coincidence that was the month when lockdown started happening in US in various states, or the lockdown was at various stages. So it seems more and more people working from remote locations and all might have something to do with it. There is not a single industry or relevant industry which has not been impacted by phishing attacks. As you can see, it is affecting all sorts of industries and organizations out there. And there are various types of phishing attacks. You have phishing attack, so it's a type of attack where it's done through your voice over phone, and there have a bunch of, I don't know if any of you have received these calls. So someone would call you and say that you are back on taxes, or you haven't paid your taxes, and someone is going to come and arrest you and so on. And basically it's happening over phone. They will spoof their phone number so that it seems to be coming live from a genuine phone number. And many people have fallen victim to it. They have lost millions of dollars in total to these kind of scams. You have smishing attacks, which are done in the form of text messages. Once again, the message will come to your messaging application, and you will be asked to click on a link or take some action, and that might end up installing malware on your device, or taking you to some location on the net where you end up giving out more information about yourself. Social media deception, where someone would create a fake profile, they will befriend the victim, and then basically try to trick them into providing sensitive information or to install malware on their devices. You have pretestings. So attackers would basically create a pretext or a believable story, and then they can use it to get more information from the victim. And this is an interesting one, which attackers will find out what are the websites that you visit most often. And then they will scan these vulnerabilities for websites for vulnerabilities and try to install malware on these sites. And then basically try to get you, when you go to this site next time, you might end up infecting your system with this malware. So that would be water holing. It's kind of, the name is based on the water hose where mostly animals will go to drink water. So you target those places which are most visited by users. Some other deceptive phishing is the most common one. I'm sure all of you have received an email at some point in your time in this life, which asks you to click on a link or log into some system. But essentially, it's a phishing email. These ones have become very common: spear phishing and whaling. So, spear phishing, basically, the attack is tailored to one victim. The attackers will find out about an individual, gain knowledge about the individual from their social media profiles and any other public information available on them. And then they will craft a message either going to this individual or coming from this individual, which would look very legitimate. So it won't be like your regular phishing emails, which just have all sorts of mistakes in them. Whaling is an attempt to go after a big fish. In this case, the individual would be someone belonging to the top management, uh, the CEO of an organization, the CFO of an organization, uh, Mr. President of a university, dean of schools, and so on. And here again, the attackers will have a lot of information on both the target and their organization, and they will use that information to craft emails, which look very legitimate. Uh, Particular form of whaling, which has been very successful and also has cost a lot of money in the last few years, is called a BEC, Business Email Compromise. In 2020, attackers used this approach to request gift cards from victims. Average value of the gift card about 1,200 bucks. But more important, they managed to request direct bank transfers, which ended up costing on average $48,000 to the victim. In one case, which was last year, the attacker managed to convince uh, the country manager in England of a German company to wire about £250,000 to some account. And later on, when this manager did that, and when he checked with the German head office, he found out that the CEO had not requested any such wire transfer. And this happened over the weekend. By the time they found out, the money was already gone. So these attacks have become very common. They are coming from all over the place, a lot of them from Nigeria, then US, Russia, and all. So there's no country which is not left alone in terms of the source of these attacks. So how does it relate to digital footprints? Well, what the threat agents do is they search for information on you, your contacts, your relationships, profession, career, audio, your video. Because if you have ever posted your video on YouTube or any other public forum uh, and it's tagged, uh, they'll find that your likes and dislikes, interests and hobbies, your travel location. So all of this information on you, which is out there in the public domain or on databases which are not very secure, they'll find it and then use the information to craft social engineering attacks and craft phishing attacks. So this is one of the strongest linkage you find between your digital footprints and our cybersecurity. So we cannot just waive our irresponsible behavior when it comes to our digital interactions by just saying that it's a personal issue, it's a privacy issue, and I'm fine with the kind of privacy I have. We have to take into account that it has wider implications. So let's do a simple test. Uh, who knows my email? If you all have access to your browsers, just go to this website, haveibeenpwned.com. Can you see that? HTTPS haveibeenpwned.com. So when you go to that website, type in your email address. Now here's something interesting. If you type your Texas A&M email address, chances are you will find that email is pretty secure email address. But if you type your other email addresses, web-based email addresses like Gmail, Outlook, and all, see what you find. Anyone already got the results?
Yes, I got no pond.
That's good actually. So which email address did you use?
My personal email ID.
That's actually really good. Anyone got any hits? Just one?
And that was using my A&M email. Yeah.
And, and then Jean also got her Temu email was in 4 breaches.
Yeah, mine was in 4.
So any of the breaches are recent, like in the last couple of years?
Yeah, one is to October 2019.
So yeah, you might want to. I think you might have changed your password since then, right? Because our Temu emails require us to change our password on a regular basis. But you haven't. My advice would be to change the password for your Temu emails. And
there's another one in February 2019 as well.
yeah. So this one was when I checked mine. So it tells you like there were data breaches, People's Data Lab, eWhite, My Fitness, which doesn't make sense because I weigh almost 200 pounds. I don't have anything to do with My Fitness. But for some reason, they had my email and verification. All of these 4 breaches in 2019 for my Gmail. So I had to change that password to a more secure password. There's another way you can find out about if your email is out there or has been compromised due to any of the data breaches. So if you use Firefox, then you can use Firefox Monitor, monitor.firefox.com, and they should give you a similar result. All right. So it would be good to cross-check to see which of the how many times your email has been breached. Now, all that it means is that in these incidents, your email appeared as part of the data which was compromised or stolen during the breach. That doesn't necessarily mean that the people have access to your passwords and all. But like I said, they don't need access to your password. Email could be a starting point, and from there they can start digging more and find more information about you. So they find out about your say friends and relatives and relations and all. Then they can use that information to craft an email to you, which would look very genuine coming from these individuals that you know, and you are more likely to trust those emails and act on those. Now, it is a serious thing. A lot of organizations do training on phishing. These countries have programs. The European Union has come up with some set of guidelines for how to deal with phishing. And we all know about all those things. Chances are we have come across those or taken these quizzes and tests which inform us about phishing to make us more aware of whether to trust an email or not. So things like suspicion of any email asking to check or renew your credentials. Don't click on a suspicious links. Very suspicious. Be suspicious of mails from people you don't know. Check with them or call them. Any mail that creates an image of urgency should be scrutinized to make sure it's not a phishing email. So we already know this, but here's the interesting thing. We don't know how effective these messages that are passed on to individuals during training are. So some faculty at the University of Arkansas are doing some very, very good research on training people to recognize phishing attacks. But again, we don't know how effective they are because there's so many of these incidents happen every year that something is missing there in a training process. In a one study which was sponsored by Google, they found was that about 30% of the people fell victim to phishing attacks. Then they went through this training, and after training, 28% fell victim to phishing attacks again. So something was missing in the training itself. Like I said, this is common knowledge, which you will find that in every advisory and guideline on how to detect phishing attacks, but it doesn't seem to be working. Now let's take a simple quiz to see how it can be difficult sometime for people who are not into cybersecurity or don't deal with cybersecurity issues every day and busy doing their own work, how challenging it could be for them to recognize a phishing attack. So one of the ways to do that, when you receive a message, so this is an example of message, you have received a one-page fax and so on and so. So basically, one of the ways to recognize a phishing attack would be to just hover your cursor over the link Don't click on it. And when you do that, it should give you the location where the link will take you. All right. Now, think about your own email behavior. When was the last time that you actually did that? Chances are you get an email, either you take action on it, or maybe delete, or just pass it on to the delete folder, or spam folder, or wherever. It's not like you spend this much time on an email where you are looking at the link, where the link is taking you. But that is one of the best ways to recognize a phishing attack. So in this case, if you can see, the link is taking you to efax.hosting.com. Nothing wrong so far. But after that, it's mailroute382.co. That doesn't seem to make much sense. All right. Another giveaway in this email is so this extension after .com, that is something suspicious. And then basically the email itself, if you look at it, doesn't make much of a sense. So this would obviously be a phishing attack. Here's another one. Hey, do you remember this photo? Again, you go and hover over the link. So what do you think of this one? Once again, it seems to be linking you to Google Drive. Nothing wrong. We often share documents and images and video clips through Google Drive. But in this case, after the .com, you have download photo site is .net. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't belong to Google URL. It shouldn't be part of a URL taking you to the drive. So that's also a phishing attack. Then this one, once again, you have various places you can check where the link is leading you to. Upgrade your Dropbox. So does it seem right? Anything fishy here? Yeah, you don't have to be overcautious because it is asking you to upgrade your Dropbox. It's taking you dropbox.com.by. Nothing wrong here. Then get more space. It takes you dropbox.com, helps SPF get more space. So the URL seems to match up. So this one seems to be a legitimate email. Then a top no reply at dropbox.com. That's also good. Here's another one. Final activity report is attached. Seems to be coming from someone called Sharon Mosley. What about this one? This may or may not be, but given the information in the mail itself, it seems legit. If there is something in the attachment, there are ways to take care of that, where the attachments can be filtered using antivirus, anti-malware controls, which will go through the attachment to make sure that it's not a malware. And most operating systems will give you that kind of facility. Emails services will give you that kind of facility. So, but this is otherwise looks like a legitimate email. So you have these. Here's another one. Let's see. Google support. Change password. Yeah, this is again definitely a phishing email. It goes to my account.google.com, but after that, there's a bunch of other information. The URL which doesn't seem legit. Plus, asking you to do something, which is always one of the biggest giveaway. Once again with Google, Google.support. That seems fine. But here you have google.com and then tiny URL. And so again, the URL seems kind of fishy. But the challenge is how to get an average user of email uh, trained into recognizing these sort of emails in a way that it doesn't take much of their time. It's not very inconvenient to them. And they still manage to filter out most of the phishing emails because of what they have learned in their training. So that is something which professionals are struggling with, that how to come up with training approaches which are effective. This one, yep, this seems fine so far. Secure Google setting. Yeah, this is fine. So what are some other problems associated with your digital footprints out there? Someone can use those to reset your credentials. I don't know if you all recall, but when McCain and Palin were running for US president, someone managed to reset the password of Sarah Palin's Gmail account. And then they got access to the email. And what that individual had done basically was gone through Palin's digital footprints, and they found enough information out there to be able to answer the security questions. If you think about the security questions that we get asked, where were you born? Mother's maiden name? Where did you get married? Which school did you graduate from in high school? Where did you go to college? Where did you have your first date? And you think about your interaction in the virtual world, and chances are there's information on these somewhere. And once you know that, then answering those security questions becomes a piece of cake, and that's what the guy did. And what he did was then answer those questions. Gmail allowed him to reset the password, and essentially he got access to all the emails. On the plus side, now Gmail has made it much more difficult to change or reset your password, because you have to go through multi-factor authentication before you can do that. But earlier it was not that difficult, and many websites and companies still follow the simpler approach. If you want to reset your credentials, they will just ask you simple security questions, which can be answered if someone has done their research on your digital footprints. It can be used to tarnish reputations. We have apps and technologies out there, deepfake, which can be used to make videos which would look that you are the one doing the presentation. Your online postings, embarrassing pictures, participation in groups flagged as extremists and all. These are all part of your digital footprints, and they can be used to tarnish your reputation. It has been used in bullying, and schools are very concerned about how to address this, because the generation going through schools today, they are very much in sync and used to using technology. Technology is a big part of their life. They were born with it, and basically, as far as they are concerned, it's just an integral part of their life. But the information that they end up leaving behind when they interact with these devices has been used in bullying. Obviously, identity theft. Basically, if you find enough information about someone, it becomes much easier to steal their identity and then use it for illegal purposes. False representation. Again, if someone finds out about your friends and family, and they can set up their own accounts which will to spoof your friends and family, and basically use that to target you in social engineering attacks, blackmail, and other implications of the information that we have. People can get on you by just searching the internet. So what are some of these footprints that you leave behind? Anyone here who's not on any social media? Everyone is on some social media? I used to be on LinkedIn, but then I left LinkedIn too. So I think, yeah, so I'm the only one who's not on any social media. But think about your interactions when on social media. Even though it might be a private account and you are sharing it only with friends and family, but you are still leaving behind a lot of information there. And especially about your personal life, facts about your personal life, your date of birth, your spouse, better half, girlfriend, boyfriend, likes, dislikes, and so on. So there's a lot of information there. The websites that you visit, that information is stored. The websites track that information. There are third parties who will track that information. But websites that you go to, your browsing habit is a big part of your digital footprint. And again, think about your browsing habit and come up to your own conclusion, how serious of a breach that could be. Mobile app uses footprints. Any app that you are using is collecting data on how you are using it, how often you are using it, where you are using it, what time you are using it, so on and so forth. And that also becomes part of your digital footprints. Vehicle telematics. Tesla collects a lot of information on you. A lot of vehicles have now smart features built into them. And sometimes they need this data to improve the performance of these smart features. Sometimes they need it just as a feedback. Sometimes they just need it for marketing purposes. But that data is being collected there. Your health data footprints, when you are interacting with with your healthcare provider, your insurance companies through their apps, through your web browsing and so on, that data is also getting collected. Means HIPAA can do its best to protect our private data. But if our browsing habits are out there for someone to look into it, it won't be that much of a challenge for them to figure out what kind of ailments you might be suffering through. If you are regularly looking for a new medicine for headache or something like that. So HIPAA can do its best. Hospitals can do their best to protect your healthcare information, but your own browsing habit might give it away. You're traveling, is apart from the fact that sometimes people themselves broadcast where they are going, why they are going, and posting pictures and things like those. You are using apps to interact with travel companies. You are using apps to book your hotels. You are using apps to print out maps, figure out routes, and so on and so forth. That is also part of your digital footprint. Location, obviously. If you are using a cell phone or any mobile device today, your location is a big part of your digital footprint. And the most serious thing which has now started to come to light, biometric data footprints. Basically, any YouTube video you post that is giving a lot of information about how you talk, your speech pattern, your pronunciation, and so on. Your voice is getting recorded by all these smart speakers, Alexa, Google, you may say Echo. Then basically you are using voice commands even with your remote controls on TV and all. Those are also stored somewhere, and if those databases are compromised, then these become these can be used in launching cyber attacks. So why do you allow this to happen? Well, number one, we don't ask the right questions when we are downloading a new app or going to a website or interacting with the virtual world in any way. We don't ask ourselves, okay, what data is going to be collected on us? Who is going to be collecting this data? Who are they going to share this data with? Where are they storing this data? Do they have the right controls in place to make sure that the data doesn't get compromised? So all of these questions we don't ask. A friend sends a text, oh, have you seen this new app? It can help you to convert any picture to a cat picture. And we go ahead and just download it and basically have a few laugh, not use the app again. But in the meantime, in the process, we have given out a lot of information about ourselves. Some other reasons why we allow our footprints to be captured. Lack of understanding. A lot of people, us just don't know that what kind of information is going out about us. And there are entities which are collecting it and they are using it for all sorts of purposes. It is convenient. Means you don't have to repeatedly log in or submit personal details to website. So if you allow them to place a cookie on your computer, you can you interact with the website without maybe providing credentials all the time. So it becomes convenient for us. There are professional reasons. You have to contribute. You want it contributes to your online reputation. So social media influencers and all, this is their livelihood. That the digital footprints are what they are monetizing to promote themselves. So basically, they have to leave these footprints behind. Then there are cultural reasons. Privacy doesn't mean the same thing in every culture, every nation, every generation. So because of those differences, we all have different take on how we look at the digital footprints. But like I said earlier, we should not be looking at these footprints in isolation in terms of only our own privacy values. They should be looked upon as having a major implication for cybersecurity for everyone else on the planet. So who are the people who are interested in your digital footprints? These are the legitimate ones. Advertisers, anyone with products or services to sell. They want to tailor their ads so that they can better target you and improve their conversion rates. Companies that publish online advertisements, they are interested in your digital footprints. Data aggregators, they will compile information from all the databases, private, public, and basically sell that to target again ads. So companies like Blue Sky, Outbrain, Rio, they all do that. Nation states, for either for law enforcement or surveillance purposes, but they are also interested in your digital footprints. And for them, given the resources they have, it's really easy to create a complete profile of you with the information that you already have in the public domain. Vendors of IoT and smart devices, Amazon Echo, Google Home, collecting data on your voice, surveillance cameras, YouTube, TikTok, collecting data on your video, on your face. If you have been to London in the last few years or you plan to go there, then basically your face is going to be in a database. London is one of the most surveyed, like one of the maximum density of camera in terms of population and area than anywhere else in the world. And that information is there. And even though UK is not a country which is known for that kind of surveillance, but you still have that over there. Biometrics is you wouldn't think about it. If any one of you are using sleep number beds, especially their smart beds, they collect more than 8.5 billion biometric data points every night. And they measure your movements, breathing rates, heartbeat, sleep habits. Now, they say they use that to improve their own products, and that is fine. But like any company out there, they cannot be 100% sure that wherever they are storing this data is completely secure and would never be breached, because that's just not possible. Let us look at some of the common places, apps, websites that you visit and what they know about you. So Google, they know your looks, your age, what you sound like, your political religious beliefs, your health, your this about your pets, where have you been, who your friends are, likes, dislikes, future plans, browsing history, and so on. So if you just use Google without doing any setting to the privacy and security aspect of your activities, they have a lot of information on you. Do this like over this weekend, given the weather we have. I don't think anyone is going to go out much, even though it's Valentine's weekend. So just, I don't know, sit down with a nice bottle of wine and send out a request to takeout at google.com, takeout.google.com, and request them to send you the data that they have on you. And go through that data, see what kind of data they have collected. And then you can go ahead and decide whether you want the data collection to continue going forward, or you can put a stop to that. And in that sense, like I found Google to be one of the providing to be one of the most more user-friendly approaches to putting a stop on what kind of data they collect, especially if you compare it to other companies like Facebook. So check it out, what data they have on you. This is what they have on me in terms of profile. So, but the reason they have only just this one piece of information is because I paused after deleting whatever they had. I also paused data collection on all my activities when I interact with Google Apps since 2010. So I check them on a regular basis to make sure those activities are still paused and not collecting anything. But before this, they had a pretty good idea about my age, my likes, dislikes, and a whole bunch of things. But now it just shows up that I'm somewhere between 45 to 54 years of age. And so I just take the 45 lower end of the range and go on with that. But to find out, we say, and when you go to this Google setting place, the privacy settings place, you can actually check what profile they have of you by going to the add personalization section. So if you have that enabled, add personalization, then you will see the what information they have on you. Facebook collects data on you even when you are not on Facebook. So if you are using many websites, like use something called Facebook Pixels to advise to you after you have left their pages, and Facebook have access to those kind of information. Any web page, application, or service that you sign into using your Facebook credentials, Facebook have access to that kind of information. They know your contacts, network connections, transaction uses, what device you are using, any information that you provide to them voluntarily, like your comments, likes, dislikes, and so on and so forth. When you are logged into Facebook, they are even tracking your browsing habits. It doesn't matter which browser you are using. There was a research about 5-6 years back. I was reading on it, and it was interesting research in the sense that they found that Facebook had could make a better prediction whether your current relationship would last or not, and if it would last for how long. So the people in the relationship might not know that in a week they will break up, but Facebook would know that in a week there's 98% chance that they will break up. So, and they were able to do that because of all these the information that they have. Amazon, this is again, while I'm very paranoid when it comes to, yeah.
It's about 50 minutes. If you think around this time is good time to give a break, I'll let you decide the timing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can take a break right now and continue from there.
Come back at 10 minutes.
Yep, sure. Sounds good.
2 o'clock ish.
Yep, sure. Yep, okay. 2 o'clock is good. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Thank
You are muted, Ravi.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad to see that not many of you ran away during the break. I hope I could say the same things for my students when I do Zoom meetings with them. So we were looking at, okay, who knows what about you and Amazon. I would be surprised if there's anyone present here or you run into who's not using Amazon or hasn't used Amazon at some point. They are collecting data through their website, obviously. Through Kindle, they know your reading habits, tablets, all your interaction with the Android operating system. Through their Prime Video, you're watching and browsing a search history, through Twitch, your gaming behavior, Ring. Basically, if you are a paid customer, they collect videos on you and they keep your recordings. Their Wi-Fi routers, they know every website you go to, and basically they say they don't collect the information and store it, but those practices might change later on. If you visit IMDb, it's a very simple database of movies and TV, but just with your search behavior over there, they can figure out your taste in movies, favorite actors, genres, and so on. On Goodreads, they can figure out your reading habits, the way you review the books, and so on. Whole Foods that they have bought, now they have a list of your groceries. And Alexa, we all know, their voice assistant. There is this new service they've started, Key, and that's an interesting one. If you give them access to your garage code, they will leave the grocery in your garage. The point is that that would help secure your groceries and won't get stolen. But just think about the security implications of that. And then you have Amazon Go for stores that will start accepting it. Basically, all you have to do is just press on the app, and then you can walk into the relevant store and do your shopping and walk out. You don't have to stop at the checkout and physically check out and so on. So Amazon has all these multiple sources of collecting data, because generally Google gets a lot of blame, Facebook gets a lot of blame about how much data they collect, but Amazon is not very far behind. Twitter, if you're using them, they know about devices you use, the locations, topics you might be interested in that would be used for advertisement, applications you have downloaded on your smartphone, every tweet you have ever posted. So they also know a lot of information. Tesla, obviously vehicle's location, your car's personal setting, your speed, mileage, monitors your airbag deployment, braking, acceleration. So basically your driving behavior. It knows stuff even when on autopilot. It's constantly in the record mode, and they are using cameras and other details that you encounter while driving. Now, and they use this data to improve the product and services, obviously. But if the data is not safe, then that could compromise your digital footprints that are collected by them and can be used against you. And it's not like Tesla has not been targeted. Last year, they escaped narrowly from a cyber attack. And then what happened was some individuals or organizations behind those individuals They try to recruit a Tesla employee. And when I say recruit, basically they try to bribe that employee to carry a ransomware on a USB drive into Tesla systems and install it over there. And they were willing to offer this employee $1 million. Luckily, the employee refused, so the attack did not go through. But there was just the interesting part about this cyber attack was that the attackers were not trying out any attack based from remote location over their network. They were not trying to exploit any vulnerability, or this was not a technical attack. This is a pure and simple this old-fashioned attack. The cyber part of the technical part of the attack would come only once the USB drive was used and the malware was installed on Tesla systems. So nothing came out of it, but that doesn't mean people would stop trying. And so with all this data that Tesla have, hopefully they are doing a good job of protecting it. So what do the people who collect your digital footprints or have your digital footprints or data on you do with it? Well, obviously, they use it to monetize your online activities, follow you, understand you, customize production services, and sell and trade data. If you're not paying for the product, think about it. You are the product. Surveillance is being used by law enforcement, by nation states for surveillance purposes, and it's used in forensics, lawsuits, solving a crime, and so on. There's quite a few cases, actually, you can Google and find them. One of the recent one was where a guy, this woman was killed, and her husband was later on charged with the crime because of the location data available from this on his phone, and they could trace the individual at that location. Right now, roundup is going on throughout the country for all the people who were part of the insurrection in Washington, and their digital footprints are being used as evidence against them, and also to identify them and arrest them. So they are used by law enforcement a lot. They are used in cyber attacks. We already saw how they are used in phishing attacks to blackmail people, data theft, cyber stalking, cyber bullying, and all. They are used in background checks to do background checks on job applicants, contractors, political opponents, opponent research, potential love interests, spouses. So there are all these uses that people are putting your digital data to find out more about you. Some of them good, some bad, some definitely illegal and unethical. So how do we start managing these digital footprints? The first thing is you have to find out what is the extent of your digital footprint. Now, all states are trying to get into providing this service that they will manage your digital footprints to provide you with applications to manage your footprints for you. And in their research, what they found that users have a lot of accounts. So if I ask you right now to think about all the online accounts that you have, chances are you won't be able to give me an accurate number, because you have signed on to a bunch of accounts over the years. Some of them you have completely forgotten about and not even using those. Sometimes the companies themselves have just gone out of business, but you have accumulated a lot of accounts over the year. And generally what this all state research found was that you are looking at something like 150 accounts on average for each user. So think about your, or try to remember all the accounts you must have opened in the last 20 years, and how many of them you still use, and how many of them you remember actually that you still have those. And you'll find out that there are a lot of accounts out there which have your credentials, which have information on you, but basically they are no longer in use. So again, this is something you might want to do when you get time. Recall all those accounts that you have and try to delete as many accounts as you can which you no longer use or no longer need. So whether it could be an account with your the place where you order your pizza from, or account with the store credit cards you might open, account with the loyalty cards that you might have with the retail outlets and so on. Just delete those if you are no longer using them. All right. How you can go out finding your extent of your footprints with some of the most commonly used products and services out there. Facebook, you can download your data from Facebook. So the link is there, and obviously the presentation will be provided to you, so you can copy it from the slides. But see what you find out, and don't be surprised if the document is running into thousands of pages. Now, these laws have improved a lot to allow you this kind of access. There was a time you could not get it from Facebook. And in Europe, it happened. One student, a doctoral student, he was doing some research on privacy and he wanted to see what Facebook had on him. He requested Facebook said no. He went to court. The courts ruled in his favor, and Facebook had to provide the data. And he was surprised to see that it ran into about more than 4,000 pages. So see what data Facebook has on you. Turn off all the personalized ads. You can do it from the settings. Manage all your third-party websites where you use Facebook credentials to log in. All right, and stop Facebook. You can stop Facebook from tracking your Google searches. So again, the instructions are here in the slide. You can go to the settings and go about and do that. And none of these controls are going to have any adverse impact on the way you use Facebook. You will still be able to connect with your friends and family, but they won't be collecting as much data on you as before. So do it when you get time again, sometime over this weekend or whenever you have time. Google actually, they provide a very usable approach, interface to take care of all the things that they track and how you can stop that and pause those. So you can get your data, like I said, from takeout.google.com, see what they have on you. These are some of the services you can disable: audible service, usage and diagnostic. For all these activities where they track you or keep information on you, you can actually pause them and delete whatever information they already have on you. So go ahead and do that. It's not going to have, like I said, any impact in your experiences with using Google products and app going forward, but at least it will remove some of the stuff on you that they have, which can be used against you if someone finds it out. Instagram also, you can go to their website, log in. They have a person icon in the upper right corner. Go to edit profile, and in the privacy and security section, you can set the settings so that not much information is collected on you, and also you can request them the data that they have on you and see what kind of information they have collected on you over since you have been using them. Snapchat also gives you an option to request your data. You submit the request, they will send you the information via link. You can click on that and find out what information they have on you. And same on Twitter, you can go to the settings in your make changes to your profile or set a profile in a way which is more private. And then also you can request your data from them and see what they have on you. So after you find out all this information that these companies have on you, what next? So you can request your data, go through it, analyze it, and stop them from collecting the data that you don't want them to collect. But then going forward, you want to make sure that your digital footprints remain limited to the stuff that you want to share. So you have to do some things. One of the best things you can do is develop secure browsing habits. All browsers at this point, the popular ones, offer you incognito mode. Use that. Now, it might cause you some inconvenience. Of the websites might display a warning, something that you cannot browse that website because of that mode. You can also have your browser set to do not track, not store any cookies, information, and so on. Again, it might cause you some inconvenience, but I think it's worth it because it also protects the leakage of your information. You can set the browser to delete all the search and browse history when you exit. So that's a good way not to worry about it. Some of the browsers like DuckDuckGo do it without even you telling them. The others, you can set it up, like if Firefox allows you to do that. So you can set it up when the browser is closed, all your search and browse history is gone. You can opt out of ad personalization. There are several sites which offer this service. One of them is optout.ads.info. So when you go to the website, they have information on about 130 or so companies that use data on you to personalize ads for you. So whenever you open a browser and visit a website or visit websites, those 130 companies, one of them would be displaying, or more of them would be displaying ads to you. So you can actually opt out or from the service from this particular link. So you go there, you select opt out wherever the option is there, and then they won't display ads to you. All right. And after you opt out, check it on a regular basis. Now, keep in mind, that's not an exhaustive list. There are many more companies which provide that kind of service. But this is one of the places where you find so many companies in one location that you can opt out of. If you try to do that individually, means you might not even know who these companies are. Forget about trying to tell them that you don't want to participate in the program. You can ask websites individually to remove you from their databases directly. Again, it's not such an easy process. Most websites won't even have that feature. In some cases, you will have to dig deep to find out where you can do that. If the option is available, like for European citizens, use the right to be forgotten. So your data collection is limited by whoever you interact with in the digital world. Don't give out your actual information whenever someone asks for it. You don't have to tell them your actual birthday, your actual address, your actual gender, and so on. Use border information. Sometimes you need temporary credentials to access certain services, certain websites. Just use border information. Don't use your real information. And I cannot emphasize enough, use virtual private network wherever you can. Now, there are some drawbacks with using VPN. One of them being that your browsing might slow down, all right, because your traffic is being routed through servers located in different countries or something. But the security that it brings is in terms of cost benefit, that's just way more than any inconvenience that it causes. Now, also keep in mind, sometimes some certain portals and websites won't allow you access if you are using a VPN. So for example, if you are using a private VPN, something like NordVPN, and you try to connect to Howdy, the Texas A&M portal, you won't get access because it recognizes that the traffic is coming from a virtual private network and it won't allow you access. So they have done that for their own security reasons. But for most of your regular online browsing and all, VPN works. You can also have VPN on your smart devices like smart TVs, phones, and tablets. And you can use the same account to protect yourself from someone tracking you. So that's one of the good things you can do. Use secure browsers on mobile devices. Like I found DuckDuckGo to be one of the most secure browsers. They don't store anything on your session, on your browsing, on your search, nothing like that. But the browsers are only available for mobile devices. On your laptops and desktops, you can use them as extensions on your existing browsers. So you can use it with, say, Firefox. And it's way better in terms of privacy and protecting your data than any other browser or search engine out there. Fine-tune the browser for security and privacy setting. Use URL filtering, content blocking, anonymous browsing, and so on. Our browsers at this point offer you these features. You just have to just spend maybe less than a minute to set them up, and basically then you are good to go. So use those. Firefox, in fact, right now also offers you the feature where you can scan your systems for malware. So that's part of their monitoring service. So there's no reason why not to use that. And your mobile apps. So these are some of the mobile apps, just to give you an idea that what are some of the problems we have with mobile apps. So these are the mobile apps, the chances are you are already using voice assistants like Siri, Alexa, Google Voice, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and they all have security problems. Facebook Messenger doesn't provide end-to-end encryption by default. So you have to opt in for that. They can access users' messages, photos, contacts, cameras without permission. Now, if they do it with permission, makes sense. But what people have found that they can do it without permission too. WhatsApp obviously has been having its own problem. They have been one of the messaging apps which are heavily targeted by threat agents out there with phishing text and messages. So then we have Pokemon Go. I don't think any of us are using Pokemon Go, but it can access your contacts, cameras, user location, obviously. And then free VPNs. There's something like my students always ask me, they don't want to pay for VPN services, but they still want to use it. And again, nothing wrong with that. There are free VPNs out there, which are pretty decent and do a good job. But you have to be careful that they are developed by trusted sources. So for example, there's this Hola VPN. If you use that, they could be using your own systems to route traffic from other users, which is not very secure, because especially if the traffic consists of malware or illegal contents and so on. So if it's going through your devices, you could be held liable for that. So you have to be careful when using free VPN. So some other things about apps. Just because you uninstall an app doesn't mean you will remove the permissions, also not necessarily. Sometimes the apps leave behind enough information so that next time you install them, they will know that an earlier version was installed. All right. So be careful about that. Studies have found that almost 1/3 of your Android apps request more permissions than they actually need. All right. So suppose you are playing a game on your device. Ask yourself, does it really need your access to your contacts? Does it really need access to your camera? Does it need access to your location and so on? And other researchers found that generally apps are running with way more permissions than they should have, way more privileges. Generally, developers are supposed to explain these things to the users, but both Android and iOS don't mandate it. So it's optional. Some developers do explain it, others don't. Ask which app does what. So you download an app which saves battery. Well, if that's all it is doing, then it shouldn't need that many privileges. All right. It should be allowed to monitor how other apps are using your computing resources, but that should be about it. And then what business model they are using. This is very important. You are using an app which is free to you, but it's not necessarily free. Maybe it's being subsidized by someone else who is using the app to collect data on you. So sometimes what apps will do, app developers do, they will use code from third parties as part of the application. And those third party will subsidize the cost of app development. Then you install the app, you start using it, but the third party code would be the one which would be making use of all the privileges that you give to the app and collecting data on you. So again, sometimes it's better to pay for the app than to go for free ones. Now, this is something, another thing you can do if you decide to start managing your digital footprints. Look at how many apps you have on your device. And if you see, these numbers are from 2017 actually. And the recent reports have suggested that the numbers have actually gone up, especially since we have already started doing remote working and all. And as you can see in US itself, the number is somewhere between around 90. This is the average number of apps which are used and installed on smartphones, each smartphone. I just did a survey of the students who are taking my cybersecurity course, and the lowest number is 50 and the highest number was 248. That's a lot of apps on these devices, especially when you take into account the another finding from some of the research on this app usage, that only 1/3 of the apps are regularly used. So they did research in Singapore. They found people use only about 40 apps out of 130 that they have on there. Same thing, something similar in Germany, some similar in Europe. So we are not using 2/3 of the apps, but they are still sitting on our devices, sometimes even running in the background and collecting all the data on us. So the first thing you can do is just make a tally, make a list of all the apps you have, and ask yourself, do you actually need those? Now, some of the apps you won't be able to get rid of. So if you are using Samsung phones, their version of Android would come with pre-installed apps which you won't be able to get rid of. All right. Sometimes you might be able to disable them, but that's about it. You won't be able to uninstall them. So you can't do much about that. But wherever you have control, ask, do you actually need that app or not? Reduce the number of apps on your cell phone. on my own phone, generally, I'm looking at about dozen apps that I use on a regular basis, and generally those are the apps which are installed there. So it's just one screen that the apps are on. There's nothing else on the phone. Then for each of these apps, find out what permissions they have. So in Android, you can go to Settings, Privacy, and Permission Manager. And then you can set app permissions for body sensors, calendars, access to call logs, camera, contacts, whole bunch of things. Location, like people often uh, believe that location should be on all the time for obvious purposes, for maps, finding directions, and so on. But you can actually set the location that the location data starts, the location sensor start up only when you are using a certain app. So when you are using Google Maps, it makes sense. But if you are just playing Angry Birds, it doesn't make sense to have your location on. Access to microphone, phone, physical activity, SMS storage, and so on. There are about 40 plus permissions that apps can have on Google, on Android operating system. So now you don't have to go into that many details, but for the some of the major permissions, you should check for each app whether they have those permissions or not. Ask yourself if they need those permissions or not. If they don't need it, just take it away from those. You can manage permissions on iPhone too. They have very excellent access controls, passcode, biometrics, two-factor authentication, and so on. So security was not a bad device. And settings, you can set the privacy settings. You can restrict the location data that is collected by the device. You can stop sharing location data. And again, the steps are given in the slides, so you can go through these steps to do that. If you don't have, if you are using a new user to the iPhone. Turn off location services for specific apps. So again, you can go to do that from your settings and privacy services. All right, but restrict these applications to only the apps that need to use these privileges. Don't give them to every application. So now this is not much, that doesn't have much to do with the digital footprints as it is, but I thought I will just bring it all up to your notice, since we have been working from home for almost a year now, and it seems that for the next few months we will continue to do so. So here are some of the things, additional things they should take care of. Corona-related phishing attacks have increased over the last year, which is obvious. We are getting lots of emails from the administration at Texas A&M and other locations from CDC and all about coronavirus related news and updates on things like where to get a vaccine, how to get a vaccine, how to register for it, and so on, where to get tested. So a whole bunch of information is getting relayed to it. And threat agents are using this opportunity to slip in their phishing emails. And if we are not careful, we might end up falling victim to one of these attacks, which is not good. Emails from people you do not know. Again, just don't act on those emails unless you are sure it's not a phishing email. People who you know but asking suspicious things to do, well, chances are maybe their profile has been compromised and someone else is using it to spoof their identity to target you. Now, if you are using Texas A&M laptops and workstations, you don't have to worry about this. A&M does a very good job of pushing antivirus updates and all. If you are using your personal systems, then make sure the antiviruses are fully updated. Very obvious thing, but research has found again and again that people lag behind when it comes to updating their antivirus softwares. Again, some very obvious things, but we have found in our research again and again that people just don't do it. So have a strong password for your wireless router. You can, most routers today will allow you to restrict the devices which can access your network by using their MAC addresses. Don't broadcast their SSID. So no one has to know that you have wireless running in your home or in your apartment. Use TAMIDS computers wherever possible. They are configured to more secure standards, and you are less likely to get to be a victim of a hacking attack if you are using TAMIDS workstations, laptops. And don't use these laptops again for leisure activities or for on personal activities. Always connect to internet via secure network. Again, seems very open. So it's a very obvious thing to do, but people just don't follow it. Luckily, all of us haven't been traveling that much or going out to restaurants, coffee shops, and all. So this part is not that much of a concern at this point. Don't send sensitive information through insecure connections via email. This could include things as simple as a student grade to something as complex as your financial statements and things like those. Emails go out in plain text. Anyone can access them and get access to your information. Do not share virtual meeting URLs on social media and public channels. Again, goes without saying. And still, we hear about incidents where someone crashed a Zoom meeting because they got access to credentials. On your own personal laptop, desktop, especially if your family is using it, kids are using and so on, disable the guest account. Now, chances are many of you are using a laptop, but you only have one account on there. That's your own account, and that has administrative privileges. It's not a good practice. Always have at least 2 accounts, one with no administrative privileges and one with administrative privileges. Log in always with the one with lower privileges, so that even if someone gets unauthorized access to that, the privileges are limited to this non-administrative account. If you must have a guest account, don't call it guest, just call it something else, and just also give it minimal privileges. Now, patches and all, chances are most applications and you are using, they always push the updates and patches to you. Things have improved a lot in the last 10 years or so. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Create a backup policy. I'm hoping all of you have that. Keep at least 2 backups of your critical data, file systems and all. Keep them separate locations, one in the office, one at home. And obviously the third storage would be your device, your laptop, where you have the data. I'm not sure how many of you are using it, but I would strongly encourage you to use disk encryption. Your storage devices get lost all the time, get stolen, left behind. Use encryption. They might contain critical research data, personal data. You don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. And this is a very common, what you call incident that happens, people losing portable devices. So use encryption. Allow the use of Macom camera only to authorized applications like Zoom, Skype, and all. Not all applications should have access to that, these features. And use camera cover to enhance privacy. Some laptops, especially the one made by Lenovo nowadays, they come with this cover built in. If they don't, you can always just go and get a cover and put it on the top of your camera. No need to have the camera. Even if someone turns the camera on remotely, they still won't have access to anything. Lock your screen if you work in shared space. Again, a very common, very well-known control. Surprising thing is still people don't use it. So that's my take on cybersecurity in relation to digital footprints and how we can manage those footprints in a manner that we don't allow it to be used in cyber attacks against databases and systems in our organizations and otherwise. So I'll be glad to take any questions if you have any.